because now Gavin is mad that they nationalized the California Guard. Trump has that ability, and people said, no president, they have to request it. No, they don't. You think that JFK said to George Wallace when he nationalized the Alabama National Guard, said, would you please let us nationalize your guard so you can be removed from stopping African-American people going to the University of Alabama?
Strap yourselves in, because what just unfolded on Fox News wasn't your average panel debate. It was a full-on ideological face-off. Victor Davis Hanson didn't stroll into that studio unprepared. He arrived locked, loaded, and ready to dismantle narratives with sharp logic, historical context, and zero tolerance for spin. Across from him sat Jessica Tarlov, eager to brand Trump's use of federal authority, especially on immigration, as a dangerous power grab. But what started as policy discussion turned into an intellectual fight. Jessica leaned hard into polls and emotion. Hanson, he remained cool and composed, cutting through the noise with laser focus. He called out the progressive habit of romanticizing street-level anarchy and selling it as grassroots democracy. To Hanson, when cities are spiraling into disorder and local leaders do nothing, calling in the National Guard isn't oppression, it's leadership. That alone flipped the mood from cable news fluff to hard-hitting truth.
You said the downward spiral started in LA when the military arrived. Is that when it happened, or was it when protesters were hurling rocks at cops?
This is very small and isolated, and Donald Trump is doing what Donald Trump does best, and he's playing the same footage. He has that image, right, of that topless protester with the Mexican flag on top of a burning Waymo car, and it's terrible, and that guy should be prosecuted. You should not be able to do that. But that doesn't mean that in general, that's what's going on here. So Gavin Newsom is speaking for a majority of Americans. Right before we came on air, there was a new Quinnipiac poll that was released. So Donald Trump, -12 on approval in general, -11 on immigration, and -16 on deportation. He has taken his best issue and decimated it. And now Americans and illegals, who, yes, they're here illegally, are living in fear of what the government is trying to do.
There's millions of dollars in damage. A lot of businesses got ransacked. And illegals should be a little scared. They broke into the country. A lot of them have committed crimes. I'd like them to be a little fearful, Jessica. Gavin Newsom's emasculated. Trump reached into his state, took his guard, and used it to protect the people that Gavin either couldn't or wouldn't do. Attacking democracy is not enforcing the law. All they're doing here is enforcing the law. And they can't even get their story straight. All right, first there was no riot, then there was a riot, then it was peaceful, then it was mostly peaceful, then Trump provoked the violence. So the National Guard provoked the riots? Because I didn't see a single National Guardsman melt down a Waymo or loot a store. Not one. You can't be held hostage in your own country by foreigners, because that's what this is. It's an extortion attempt. Every time you try to enforce the law, we're going to burn stuff. That's not how it works. Gavin thinks it's good politics to let your own city burn down. That's good politics?
This wasn't your standard back and forth. It was a political battlefield. On one end, Jessica Tarlov waved the warning flag of authoritarianism. On the other, Victor Davis Hanson calmly loaded up historical facts and fired back like he'd been preparing for this exact confrontation. At the core, Donald Trump's use of state power, particularly around border control and civil unrest. Tarlov accused Trump of acting like a dictator in disguise, saying his actions were extreme and a threat to democratic values. But Hanson didn't just disagree, he shredded the accusation. He flipped the narrative, arguing Trump wasn't grabbing power but stepping in where weak leadership failed. Letting mobs run the streets, torch buildings, attack cops, and wave foreign flags unchecked, then crying tyranny when someone steps in? That's not democracy. That's collapse. Hanson even cited historical examples, like JFK intervening during Alabama's segregation crisis, to prove that sometimes strong federal action is not authoritarianism, but necessary protection. When Tarlov tried to rely on polling, Hanson dismantled that too, calling out the manipulation behind selective sampling and the way media spins those numbers to shape a preferred story. His knockout line: when you excuse lawlessness and demonize the people trying to stop it, you're not defending freedom, you're destroying it.
But here's what's interesting. The mayor, Karen Bass, came down in her public comments on the side of the protesters who were protesting the idea of deportation at all. kind of like Kamala Harris used to march against deportation. And Gavin Newsom then gave a series of editorializations that I think have ruined his chances ever to be a serious national candidate. He said this was chaotic, this was reckless, and he said that they were just trying to have an arbitrary deportation quota. Gavin, 12 million people came into the country illegally. That was 3 million a year. That was 250,000 per month. That was over 8,000 a day. They have not been able to deport more than 1,000 on most days, sometimes 500. They would have to deport 8,000 people every single day for 4 years to get back where we were with 20 million illegal aliens when Joe Biden entered office. So it's not a quota, it's an effort to stop an invasion. What I'm getting at is, on one side of these violent acts, you have these protesters, and I'll just give a word of advice. You're going to lose the optics, Democrats, left, and immigration protesters if you have a lot of people here illegally and they're waving the American, not the American flag, but the Mexican flag as they're committing acts of violence. Think of the logic. I am waving the flag of the country under no circumstances I want to return, but I am attacking the officers and the infrastructure of the country that under every circumstance I want to stay in. That might explain why, in the midst of all of this negative publicity, a CBS poll taken to show that people were outraged showed that just the opposite. 54% of the American people are...
Let's talk numbers, the ones they don't want you to hear. While Jessica Tarlov leaned on cherry-picked polls to claim Americans are turning against Trump's border policies, Victor Davis Hanson came ready with the receipts the mainstream loves to ignore. He pointed to data, like a CBS poll, showing most Americans do support strong border enforcement and ongoing deportations. Not just Republicans. Not just conservatives. A wide mix of the population believes illegal entry should have consequences. Why? Because people see what's happening. They watch the crisis unfold at the border. They see New York, Chicago, and other cities buckling under the pressure of tens of thousands of undocumented migrants. Overflowing shelters, strained hospitals, overwhelmed schools. It's not just political theater. It's real, and it's local. For many, it feels like their communities are being traded in for political correctness points. And Hanson didn't frame this as a Trump defense. He framed it as a fight for truth. He wasn't there to defend one man. He was there to expose how polls are weaponized, how stories are crafted, and how the truth is often buried beneath media narratives. In his view, enforcing borders and deploying the National Guard isn't tyranny. It's a nation protecting itself. What's truly authoritarian, Hanson argued, is a government that refuses to protect its citizens, then demonize anyone who steps up to do the job. In this battle, Hanson didn't just push back on Tarlov. He tore apart the entire media machine built on spin, silence, and selective outrage.